Hello friends, Lil J here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of DotaAlchemy.com, and in this video we're going to be looking at TNC Predator versus Mineski, part of the Chongqing Major. I know I'm mispronouncing that, but in any case we're going to be looking at Ninjaboogie's player perspective. He is a support. Support was requested last time I did one of these videos, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at this Lich replay and just see what he did in the game. That was very interesting. One thing you might be wondering is why I look shittier and sound shittier than normal. Number one, I'm just ugly, so I look shitty all the time, but number two, I'm also in a hotel right now, which you might think makes it so I can't make a lot of content, but I actually can't binge queue, solo queue right now because the internet sucks, so I'm going to be making more content instead of less content. So there's going to be a lot of player perspective stuff coming out this week. In particular, if it doesn't come out on the YouTube channel, it will come out on the site. I'm going to try to do like one video a day, but without further ado, let's just get right into the replay. So the first thing that I found really interesting about this game was in the draft. TNC, they picked the Lich 4th. A lot of the time when we see this Lich being picked in competitive right now, with how the hero has been buffed in 7.20, they will pick Lich and then plus a hero that can function with Lich in the first phase, just so that way you have a relatively stable, versatile opener, and you know that that lane's going to do really well. Basically, you want to pick a hero to benefit from that Frost Shield, some hero that can run in, get in the enemy team's face, trade with them, and abuse the damage that's coming from the Frost Shield, and abuse the slow that's coming from the Frost Shield. So they fourth pick this Lich, and a lot of the time with this puck hero, even in the new patch where it's getting picked, it was really bad in the last patch, but people are usually running it in the offlane. So presumably when you see a puck and a morphling, you assume that it's going to be an offlane puck, and then a morphling carry, and then a mid whatever the last pick is, so maybe mid brewmaster, considering the brew came last. But TNC favors the Lich with the Lich combo so highly that they even picked Gabby Brew in a carry situation. So he's a carry Brew, which is okay because they have a mid morphling, so he will do enough carrying in the game. But basically the important thing to me here is that TNC, they really value this Lich, but it seems only with heroes that can actually benefit from the Lich in the laning phase. Like, this hero is a complete lane dominator right now, but you need to pair it with something that's going to use the Frost Shield. And maybe that's why in a lot of the comments that I was reading in the 7.20 videos that we were releasing, people were saying this new Lich sucks. Maybe it's actually because you're not favoring the Lich with these heroes that can actually benefit from the Frost Shield. But Brew really can. Like, he runs in and he does so much damage with the Brew Slow and then the new Brew Drunken Brawler or whatever it's called. Like, this hero really benefits from Lich. So TNC is even favoring the Brewmaster, even if they have to throw it into a carry scenario, just because it's that good with the Lich. So the second thing that I want to point out about this replay was just the way that Ninjaboogie blocked the easy camp, the enemy safe lane easy camp. So basically, when you're playing a high-pressure offlane, which of course Brewmaster plus Lich is going to be an extremely high-pressure offlane where you're going to try to kill them a lot, you want to block the easy camp because a lot of the time you can turn a losing lane into a lane that's doing okay, or even a winning lane if you have the easy camp, because you will pull the creeps to the easy camp will die, and then you'll send a double wave into the enemy offlane, and if there's a double wave, Ninjaboogie and this Brewmaster, these guys can't pressure at all because there's going to be just too many creeps where it will be dangerous for them to pressure. And then what's going to happen is that double wave will go into their tower and then send a double wave back into potentially this Terrorblade, who should be having a really rough time, but that will be a good time for the Terrorblade. So basically, if you're in a high pressure offlane situation, whether you're the support or the offlaner, you want that easy camp to be blocked. If you're going to win the lane, you don't want to let them have that. So the way Ninjaboogie blocks this is he uses a sentry ward, and I've seen this trend more and more lately where people aren't wasting an observer ward to block this camp, and instead they'll have an observer ward somewhere useful on the map and then an observer ward mid, because sentries last for 6 minutes as well. So there's not much of a point in using an observer ward that's not going to give great vision. It's not necessary to get vision up here because they're going to be dominating this lane anyway, right? So what does the vision provide them? It doesn't provide them anything. They're already safe up here because it's the high pressure lane. So they use a sentry ward instead, which is a little bit more expensive, but in terms of you being able to use the observer wards elsewhere, it's actually not expensive. Like the vision that you'd be losing from placing an observer ward here, the useful vision that you should be losing, I should say, that would be lost from placing it here would be well not worth the 30 gold that is the difference between a sentry and observer. So people are using sentry wards for this. And the way that he blocks this I found really cool. So basically, we'll speed it up here just so we can see. So basically what he does is they're just contesting the rune. He waits for Tusk to walk up to the high ground. And they're just, you know, chilling, 3-manning this rune. This is a very common trend, by the way, is to 3-man these runes. So he picks up the bounty rune, and this is the important part. So he picks up the bounty rune because Tusk isn't on the high ground. It's very possible that there's somebody that's watching him right now. And let's see, is there somebody watching him? Maybe, potentially. I mean, the thing is, he doesn't know. So what he does is he walks away, and that's just indicating that, like, okay, they might see he has a sentry ward in his inventory. They're not going to think anything of that because that's not an observer ward. So he has there's no necessity to place a sentry ward, right? So they might see him on the high ground, and he walks away, and then what they're going to do is they're going to walk away. The enemies that could be on the high ground, they're going to walk away to go block the creeps and to go do something else. And then since he walked away, which made them walk away, he walks back. So it was a fake out, and then he goes and he places this sentry ward. He actually tangos a tree, which allows him to place this sentry ward on the... Well, I think I have to let this... Yeah, okay. So it allows him to place the sentry ward. Like, if you try to place it anywhere here, it will say invalid spot for a ward, but if you tango this tree, you can place it right there. So if they deward up in this area, they're not going to see it because it's going to be hidden in the trees. But in any case, the most important thing here, in my opinion, is the fact that he walks away, which would possibly make it so that the enemy team walks away, and then in that time he places the ward. So that's always a question, like, how do you block the easy camp without getting scouted? This is how you do it. You have to make plays like this, because if you just run to the easy camp and block it, they can be standing on the high ground now, and they'll just see you block it, and then they'll de-ward it. And then the fact that it's a sentry ward as well, like if they de-ward that, all they're getting is a sentry ward, and that's not that big of a deal. So I talked a little bit about how the Brew and Lich lane is extremely high pressure, and the way that Mineski tries to respond to this is that they essentially decide to sacrifice the Terrorblade and put him against the Brew plus Lich lane, and then send the Shadow Shaman mid. And this way, Mineski, if nothing were to happen, they would win 2 out of the 3 lanes, because the bot lane is Dazzle plus Sand King, which is going to pressure extremely hard. Both of these heroes are incredible laners right now. So the way that Ninjaboogie responds to this is he realizes that all he needs to do in this game is to follow around the Shadow Shaman, and then they're going to win 2 out of the 3 lanes, because if the Brewmaster is solo against a Terrorblade, he's going to win that lane regardless if the Lich is there or not, doesn't matter. And really the Shadow Shaman is like the determining factor for Mineski for who wins the lane. So he just walks to mid and starts right-clicking the living hell out of this Shadow Shaman. And the way that he does it is relatively interesting too. So he's just trying to deny when the Shadow Shaman's not showing, and when the Shadow Shaman is showing, he's trading with him, and whenever the Shadow Shaman walks up to try to hit him, he abuses the fact that the Shadow Shaman's range is very, very low. So essentially, Pilot Eye walks away, Ninjaboogie will chase him and hit him. Pilot Eye walks towards him, Ninjaboogie will run away. And then in particular, when Ninjaboogie's on the high ground and Pilot Eye's on the low ground, he's looking to trade with him like regardless, and Pilot Eye, being a good player, doesn't even try to right-click Ninjaboogie, because he knows that trading up the high ground is not going to be very effective, even though the Shadow Shaman's damage is quite high. So this lane proceeds like this for quite some time. The main important thing about this is that Morphling is actually getting something because Ninjaboogie is here. Like I said, the Dazzle lane is going to do incredibly well, but that's a given. That's why the puck was there. So Ninjaboogie goes at the 2-minute mark, gets the rune, picks up a DD, puts on the Frost Shield, forces the Shadow Shaman to TP out. Once again, he's literally just chasing this guy around, being obnoxious, and just trying to follow around the Shadow Shaman. But now that the Shadow Shaman is gone and that he is back in base, it's just Morphling versus a DK. Morphling will be perfectly fine in that lane. DK will be perfectly fine in that lane. You know, they'll trade, they'll wash. That's how any DK lane really goes. So he heads to the top lane because he knows that there's really no pressuring a DK. There's only relieving pressure from the Morphling, but you can pressure a Terrorblade, especially with level 1 in the Frost Blast, and then a double damage rune as well. So we can see here that I believe the Shadow Shaman does run up here at a certain point, just because Pilot Eye realizes that Ninjaboogie is just going to follow him, so it doesn't really matter. May as well just get a little bit more out of this lane. So I want to point out an interesting rotation that TNC makes as a whole. This isn't really necessarily Ninjaboogie doing this, but this, you know, he's involved in it. Basically, once they take this top tier 1 tower, they send Cuckoo to the top lane to catch up, and then they send the supports plus the strong hero, which is the Brewmaster, to the bot lane to apply pressure. And this is a very common rotation that I'm seeing these days. Like, normally what you would do is you would keep the Brew and the Lich and probably +1 up here, and then apply pressure to this tower, and then have somebody maybe farm this area and this area to catch up. But I think with how strong like how hard it is to take these tier 2s, like there's this high ground here where the enemy team could just TP to the shrine and come around the back and just like destroy you. Like it's really, really hard to pressure these tier 2s. So instead, what teams are doing is they're kind of like pairing the fact that they're able to defend their tier 1 tower with the fact that these tier 2s are so hard to play around. And what people are doing is instead they send the supports plus a strong hero to the safe lane, and then they send whichever other core is doing poorly to the off lane to just get something, to just farm, because this area is very, very safe, but this area is not. So one person can occupy this and farm, but not a bunch of people. Like it's way too dangerous. You're going to get smoked on. So instead, they go to their own safe lane, and then that essentially becomes the lane that they pressure, and that they act as like a barrier where, hey, you're not going to get my safe lane tower no matter how strong you are. Like this Brew is way, way too strong. And as we can see, like they're just chilling here. They actually just do a lane rotation. That's it. They just farm, and it's not even necessarily about pressuring. It's just about having the strong heroes here. And you can see that the puck actually ends up dying, which sucks, but that's the thing when you're playing the dead lane. Like, the top lane is now the dead lane in this game, despite in the past, the dead lane would actually be the safe lane. That's not how it is anymore, just with how the map has been changed. So in this game, the play that we're about to see kind of sealed the deal, in my opinion, in terms of TNC being able to get a massive amount off the map that they really shouldn't be able to if it wasn't for these new heroes being absolutely crazy. Basically, they use the Tusk tag team, plus the Lich Frost Shield, plus Morphling's ability to lifesteal now, which doesn't include the armor. So essentially, like when Morph hits Roche has very high armor, but Morph is going to lifesteal for the full amount, and they use that fact to take Roche on. And I think we're going to see a lot more people doing this, and I know this doesn't really relate to Ninjaboogie other than the fact that he gave the 60% physical reduction, or 50% at this level physical reduction, which allows them to take Roche, but essentially, this play was still so important to how this game was played, where we now have an Aegis on the Morphling. This guy's unkillable, and now they can take so much off of the map that I felt like it had to be included, despite not actually being super Ninjaboogie related. Like, they did use this Frost Shield to do it, but it doesn't really matter. What really matters is the fact that this Morphling is able to lifesteal for the full amount, despite Roshan having a massive amount of armor. Like, that is just a change to lifesteal that was added to the game, and possibly not okay. Might get changed. Roshan might be like the exception, just because this was a little too much. The amount that they were able to get off of this Aegis because of the lifesteal changes. But in any case, it doesn't really matter. Ninjaboogie still played phenomenally in the early game, and I think that's obviously the most important part of the game for supports. When it comes to the late game, we'll cover a little bit about that, but it's less so important because this game was a bit of a snowball from this point onward. So I said I'd talk a little bit about the late game, and I know 19 minutes isn't particularly late into the game, but still, what I'm about to talk about is very relevant to all points in the game, other than maybe like the laning stage. So it's more of like the information is mid to late game information, not necessarily that the game is super late. But in any case, I see a lot of 5 rolls when they go for smokes like this, when they participate in team fights like this. They will run in and die and not be super useful. Maybe they'll get their spells off, but essentially I think there's a lot more that you can get out of a 5 roll if you play smart enough. So they go for a smoke to this bottom area. It's a 3k gold lead, but they've hit a really, really good timing with this Brew Radiance. Morphling is absolutely huge with the Lincoln Sphere, and I think their heroes are just better at fighting at this point in the game. So they smoke to this bot lane. They've been winning every fight for the last little while. It's a very simple smoke. There's just 2 towers down here they want to secure. So Ninjaboogie walks through the trees, places a ward on the high ground. All that's going to accomplish is it gives vision for the fight. It gives vision for people TPing in to assist the fight, but his positioning is really important. So we can look at his team. His team is actually here on the low ground, and they're going on the Sand King. Lich is in the trees up here, and the reason that this is important is because this is kind of a thought process that a lot of 5 rolls have been employing for the past 2 to 3 months that I've seen in competitive. 5 rolls are still sacrificing themselves in order to you know, for the greater good, like, so people use spells on them so they can defend a tower. 5-rolls are sacrificing themselves, but they're making themselves a pain in the ass to kill. So we can see in this fight, that's reflected by Ninjaboogie's positioning. He's standing on the high ground. He places a sentry ward in the trees, which is also on the high ground and really hard to kill. This is going to reveal the Sand King. Any detection, any wards they have in this area, it's going to be scouted by the sentry ward. And then he's just casting his spells from the high ground. And the reason that this is important is because if they do want to commit to him, they're going to have to walk into the trees up here, and it's going to be horrible positioning for them. You can see that the DK is actually completely ignoring the Lich because it just wouldn't be realistic to walk up there and kill the Lich, even though most 5-rolls are the heroes that you want to kill. You know, Chain Frost is important, Sinister Gaze is important, Frost Shield is important. Like, these 5-rolls, they do a lot and have very little HP. They're so easy to kill. So your positioning matters a lot. We can see that he's not right-clicking. He's not revealing himself up here until he casts spells. He's just casting spells from the high ground, and as a result, he actually ends up surviving this fight. So that's the thing. A lot of 5-rolls, you'll do this and you'll die. And if you survive, it's obviously good because you're alive, and otherwise you'd be dead. You'd be one of those 5-rolls that just runs in like, oh, I did something, you know, it doesn't matter, I'm a 5-roll. Or like they commit to you, and then they've committed so much to you because you're in a good position that you win the game more so because of your death than just walking in and dying. So I think it's really important just to just take note of his positioning in this fight, because he actually did this a lot in the early game, where he would run in to defend one of his towers. He'd run into the trees and just juke around and be so annoying where they would have to dive him, his team would TP in, and then they'd turn the fight. Not because he died, but because in his death, he forced the enemy team into a horrible position. So after this point, they have just hit an amazing timing on TNC. They basically just run around, take all the towers, kill Mineski. There's no way that Mineski can fight them for the rest of the game. I think that their heroes are just strictly better from this point onward with the items that they have, and it definitely shows. It's just a snowball from this point onward.